And we're back for round two of the Expedition TNE number 8, challenge number 8. And I'm here with Stormguard 798. And we'll be, before we get to the round, we're going to be looking at the wild card race. I think some people in the booth might be invested in this. Maybe me, I guess maybe Stormguard, I can't really tell. But so we're going to show you. So this is kind of another vantage point. So each individual tournament, whoever wins gets to play in the TNE Invitational. But in addition to that, there are the wildcard slots, which are the people that haven't qualified yet by winning one of the tournaments, but have consistently shown to be really good competitors. So Stormguard, can you give me a rundown of how this works and how things are playing out? Yeah. I'm not sure if any of that made it through. We might have had some small mic issues, so if you can give another rundown of what's going on here. Yeah, so yeah, we seem to be having some issue with Stormguard's mic real quick. Not sure if what he's broadcast. Um, so in the meantime, I'll give a quick rundown of this. So pretty much what happens is the top 7 competitors with the most points, so in the projected column, will be qualified. So if we were to stop right now, it would be the 7 on the left that we see, and then on the hunt are people that can acquire more points to make it into the wildcard slots on to compete invitational at the where the winner of the whole thing will be qualified for work. So joining people like myself, Theo, a bunch of other really good. So in attendance today, most notably, we saw Croge in the round 1 feature match, round 2 feature match, Derek Davis. Phoenix is here today. DQ Dagu is on the hunt with their 15 points, so just on the outside looking in right now. And we saw Hammer Time also in round 1. So a few good finishes. You know, if you can't take it down all the way, just being able to make it, you know, even to the elimination rounds, every win counts. And I'm really excited to see how this shapes up over the next.
Absolutely. So, although the points indicate like presently who is doing well, it doesn't give you the entire story. Most notably, I want to talk about Jez. So, as we can see here, Jez is presently in quote unquote second place on the leaderboard with 8 points. But what that doesn't is that Jez still has 2 events to play in. Yeah, since the way that the leaderboard system works is that it counts your best 5 events. Jez technically has 2 zeros present, and therefore has the best opportunity to improve upon their score. This is true of other players such as Newer Shadow, as well as Spiffer. So don't be fooled by these quote unquote low-ish scores. They don't actually represent the whole picture because it doesn't tell you how much these scores can be. One other thing for this season's wildcard hunt is because of the way that it's structured with the best 5 events instead of say like the best 6, the margins between each of the different players is unbelievably small. So for instance, what is separating myself as being on the outs essentially at the wildcard hunt and John Kez is 2%. 2% in our opponent's match win percent. not even our own match win percentage, our opponents. So that should give you an indication of how close this wildcard hunt is right now, and how just a single event can completely change this entire leaderboard. So that's just something we want to talk about now. Best of luck to all the players, myself included, of course, currently fighting in this wildcard hunt, and may the best players emerge victorious at the end.
Yeah, and with all that in mind, I really appreciate you, choosing to join me in the booth instead of competing and trying to, you know, make it to the invitational. But I have a lot of faith I will be seeing you at the mid next month.
Hopefully so. Okay, so we are hopping into this feature match between two excellent players. Derek Davis, as we saw currently in the wildcard hunt, as well as our previous invitational up against NotoriousGHP, one of the LCQ competitors from last year, and just one of the most fantastic players in Eternal. Both are on this FJS Unleashed deck that I've been about. Derek Davis is on our team's version, our team, the Glorious Gathering, where we're a little bit more mid-range focused, like we have more units, a little bit more cheap removal in the Searing Fist, and so forth. Whereas Notorious GHP has opted for a little bit more of a control. So they have the additional 4 Saloon Massacres as the sweeper, or when Unleashed shenanigans happen, as well as the 4 call the decks to find those ever important minor muskets to essentially flesh out your strategy. So I'd be very interested to see exactly how this matchup plays out for both.
Yeah, we're aware that the names are backwards on so Derek Davis is on the bottom and Notorious GHP up. So we'll get that fixed shortly. But so yeah, just in the mirror match, it's always very small edges and kind of decisions that happen during the deck building process that kind of dictates the overall pacing of the game. So with that awareness, we see Derek Davis actually boosting up their Parliament Elder up to a 6. And sure, it happens to be Nothing Remains that's played here, but if all GHP had was a pile of Saloon Massacres, it actually would have turned out very well for Derek Davis.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, Derek Davis drawing the triple Searing Fist here. Probably one of the weakest cards in this matchup, but as we can see how the Warcry from the Tinker Unionist, the pseudo Warcry from the Skeleton Patrol really adding up for this Black Book here. Because now this is going to be very, very difficult for Notorious GHP to get off the board, other than, say, through hard removal, like Slay or another sweeper, such as Nothing.
Right. So given the stats on the Black Book also, it prevents a sort of like Miner's Musket into an Unleashed unit, go wide, let me try to race you, because if it's a 1/7 Black Book, then sure, maybe you're not actually losing equity every time when you attack a space with your units. But the fact that it's large enough to actually tussle means that there's a pretty high chance that you wouldn't be able to race it.
And now we're seeing the power of, say, the Warcry buffs alongside all of these Unleashed units, because now Derek Davis can play out the Parliament Elders and not be afraid of, say, a Saloon Massacre, as you pointed out, because they've been buffed out of that raid.
Yeah, and this is something that's really pointing out, as I mentioned at the beginning of the match, just actual differences between the lists. So, for instance, Notorious GHP chose to play Cult the deck, which they played, I believe, on the second, and really smooth out the draws, find the essential pieces. But where Derek Davis's list was really able to come out ahead was by playing the Tinker Unionist, and by having this bigger Black Book, just being able to have better draws and have this kind of like aggressive draw for this more mid-rangey / combo deck, really gave it the option here to just really pull ahead.
Unfortunately, no relic here to unleash with the Tinker Unionist, but this second Black Book is still going to do a fantastic. Oh, opting not to drop the second black book, perhaps being concerned with, say, like a top deck sweeper from Notorious GHP. Absolutely respect that. And most likely, if they had it last turn, they would have played it as well.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So you still knew about the Saloon Massacre from the Black Book earlier, and if you were just counting the power, you can like say with some amount of probability that there's another power in hand. So then it just really comes down to the top deck. So just thinking, okay, I win, 99% of the time. It's like how do I lose this? And it's like, oh yeah, if I overcommit and then like happen to have these string of bad draws, I know that it's possible that GHP has a really good unit on top of their deck, maybe niche units. I need to just wait, hold back, and my Parliament Elders are coming off of being stunned next turn, so I can just attack for lethal. Like, I'm not worried about single slay breaking up stuff.
absolutely. And I think the other consideration is given all the Warcry triggers that Derek Davis has been able to stack up, they just know that whatever they top deck off the top of the deck, whatever they top deck is most likely going to be more powerful than whatever page.
Man, so this first seven from Derek Davis, if Scaleswarm Patrol still had inscribed,
Oh,
definitely like a snap key for me, but looks like it'd probably be a mulligan here.
absolutely a mulligan for me as well. But with the way that these Unleashed decks can play out, you can afford to keep significantly more power heavy hands because Unleash naturally lends itself to being a flood mitigating mechanic. So you only need one Unleash unit after all to completely.
Right. And especially when your deck is so focused on buffing the different units, like the units on top of the deck, when you when you do flood out, as you mentioned, it's not like you're just getting like an inconsequential like 1/1 or 2/2 extra. You're getting like a unit that, since there's another copy, just kind of demands a sweeper. Like it's not like your slays are going to be trade off. Like I wonder if we're going to end up in a world where like maybe not literally slay, but that it might just be difficult to play point removal spells if there's going to be all these unleashed.
Absolutely.
So grabbing the second shadow there, pretty good play with the unleash unit that you might want to play on turn 3 to start applying some pressure.
A triple miners musket here. The miners musket doesn't do a whole lot of removing units, but it's just nice to get some cheap cards, especially if I think yes, Miner's Musket works well with the Unleash units up, but even any kind of unit that tends to snowball. So, for instance, turn 2 Miner's Musket, the turn 3 Black Book can similarly be very, very difficult for many decks. Ooh, and now here we're seeing strength of the of cheap Unleash card, so to speak, with this Barbarian Gorillas, Derek Davis dropping 9 strength worth of units for a mere 3 power. And knowing that Notorious GHP is 2 turns out from Nothing Remains, they're really just gambling on GHP not having the Saloon Massacre.
Right. But kind of being forced to be able to play the gorillas because just the 4/3 wasn't going to take it down by itself. Your opponent could play or even just blocker. So pretty good awareness there that you just got to run out there and jam. So that's 1/1. A little bit faster of a second game, but the deck's kind of just showing that there is a decent amount of like variance that comes up in the different decks, but there's some like calculated variance with two strong players. Like we're not going to see like many, if any, missteps and stuff like that. But just overall, like a pretty interesting decision from GHP side. Or sorry, that was actually 2-0, right? Because
Yep.
Black Book game. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. I screwed that one up. But yeah. So Derek Davis advancing through, and as we saw on the wildcard screen, just still in the thick of it, looking to improve some performances. Make it back to the Invitational. I remember commentating and being a part of the previous Invitational where Derek Davis was really just pairing up one of the formats, and ultimately I think maybe came in like fourth or
Yep.
really, I I know that they're a magic grinder as well as an eternal grinder, so it's really good to see.
Right, hopping into our quote backup match here, we have Secret Plans running, well, Game Grump's winning list from last week against Apple Chips, running back what it seems to be a very similar list, what they had last week, with being this FTS Heroes Sacrifice mid range good stuff deck. In,
Yeah,
given how this. Yeah. Sorry,
if
go
I
ahead.
recall correctly, uh, I think Apple Chips' list last week didn't have the Zhou combo with Still Stronghold. I thought that they had their fives were like fives and sixes. I guess we're situated a little bit differently, but we see two Zhous, two this week.
Oh, I do believe they did have that split last week, but notably, I think they've gone down a couple of seals or devour just to work with the Zetos and the Dino Nest and the Rack. Just have that little bit of extra synergy here.
Gotcha.
And then of course the Saloon Massacre that we had been talking about previously as well, that these mid-range decks have started incorporating. Unfortunately, it's not going to be as effective against this margin port list, but I believe it was nonetheless effective.
Yeah, so we're kind of like at an interesting. So, well, one question is whether or not Apple Chips is paused from just being able to suss out that there's a shrivel or slay type of card in Secret Plans. Um, so we see the attack here, but with the shrivel able to just take it down on.
Absolutely. And Stormhawk Plating has really emerged as a very strong card in this metagame as well, the following the Bullseye nerf. Even though Bullseye can still hit Stormhawk Plating because of the narrowed range, relics, a lot less decks are now running Bullseye. And this opens the door for these very defensive Justice decks to go sweepers into massive relic weapon that other decks can have difficulties doing.
Right, it's kind of an interesting feature of where we're at. So it puts a small premium on charge units, but even if you have charge units to kill the plating on the way back, then probably lost 2 units along the way. So you're still kind of getting 2 for 1. And this is out of a card that has so little cost to put into your deck due to grab mechanic. So Secret Plans has a pretty interesting decision to make. So if you play Nothing Remains, then you can count on your spot removal, just cleaning up like 1 or 2 things. But if you deploy like some of your spot removal, you can kind of entice Apple Chips to be able to deploy more things. That's actually what we see here, and I like that.
Absolutely.
See kind of a similar line here, just trying to goad Apple Chips playing more.
Very speak from plans, lining up their Stormhawk plane, and I think Dino Nest. It's unfortunately it didn't. It's not didn't do that much. It still did a lot for Apple Chips this game, and we're seeing the power of the card. That even after 2 rounds of nerfs, we're still seeing it perform fantastically across a wide range of time range. So just speaking to, I suppose, how strong the card was before it was nerfed.
There was a pretty interesting decision for Secret Plans when they had Call the Hit and Stormhawk playing because there are 2 cards in hand with 7 power, whether or not you inscribe the Call the Hit. I like the decision to not inscribe Call the Hit because you make it so that way uh, both power and non-power is good for you. Whereas if you inscribe the Call the Hit and then draw another power too, Stormhawk playing might just not. But there's always a question of pacing. And here we actually see the Hidden Garrote drawn off the top, able to end the game.
Excellent.
It was hidden because it was on top of the deck and it doesn't have warp.
Yeah, Yes, unlike many other weapons. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like no one hears about the normal Garrotes, only the hidden ones, as they.
I love hidden. I love that they included hidden Garo as just a very clean way to deal with because Shadow normally, I'm not gonna say it's difficulty, but because it relies on say like cheap spot removal, a
Mm.
plunk usually is say like a 2-for-1 against them, if not more. But with the inclusion of Hingara, it just allows for a little bit more early game interaction out of the shadow decks, which I can extremely appreciate.
Yeah, like without thinking too much about it, I think the maybe other than Unleash, like one of the best mechanics in Eternal is Aegis because it's like stop anything bad that happens in the most generic way possible, which is like very powerful. So I actually like putting, I guess we would call it the Vira tax, like the remove all Aegis tax. So we've seen that on Shadow Creeper and now on Hidden Corrode. And I like that in small doses. Like I don't want it on every card. I don't want to make it such that Aegis doesn't exist anymore. But I do think Aegis is a very powerful at some checks.
The
Both hands pretty
you know,
serviceable here.
I think Secret Cleanse's hand is pretty serviceable. You've got some interaction, you've got your Parliament Elder to hopefully get out of hand and just ramp,
Hmm.
which is very, very powerful. From Apple Chips aside, a little bit of a slower hand, but you do have the both the Vikram and Evelina, which can get charged and really claw back that tempo in your favor.
Right. I'll be interested in seeing what Apple Chips does here. Like my intuition is to play the bomb, just not let them ramp. But maybe we'll see the Sindane because then you can kind of like trade power bursts for power off of the like the two ships passing them.
I think, yeah, I think I would definitely opt for the bomb here. And the reason is because I think Black Book is is a fairly big concern for Apple Chips. So say in this situation, um
Wow.
sorry, Apple
You're a
Chips does
prophet.
this. Wow, okay. Called it apparently. But yes, Black in this case, if Black Book ended up taking the Vicar's bomb from Apple Chips' hand, then it suddenly becomes a really big problem for Apple Chips to do. So just trying to stave that off as much as possible, or just not putting yourself in a position where you get blown out that way, I think was a fantastic.
So here we have another interesting Apple Chips and like how you want to play it in terms of contract and at your curve. You see the Sindane here because you're able to still play the Vikram the next. So like it's not like you're counting on being able to play Evelina next. So not denying yourself that much like optionality by additional.
Absolutely.
Missing on the fifth power also pretty hurt for Secret Plan or hurt pretty badly with all these fives. Very powerful fives in here.
Yep. And as we talked about with Hammer Time Stack, 5 is just such a crucial breakpoint for so many decks in this. And that's why it's also very nice that nothing is like gets underneath all that. So you clear the board on 4 and then slam your massive Haymaker. 5. The 10. I just say it's almost like we have fantastic designers who designed a very interesting and intricate that works well together.
Yeah, yeah. Like I know in a lot of internal team discussions for us, a lot of conversation was over the five drops. Like there's a range of different people on our team that think that five drops are way better than other ones, and therefore you should be playing the early game differently based on what we think the good five drops are. But
To swivel here, I think yeah, I think Secret Plans is just simply understanding that hey, Apple Chips is on 5 power at this point. If they play a Riva or their or Zo, they're not going to be able to answer it with Shrivel regardless. So they might as well Shrivel at slow speed on their turn just to make sure that the Sending doesn't get an additional power burst and let Apple Chips swing the tempo even further in its favor.
It is pretty interesting for me this turn that Applechips chose to play a pseudo one cost Riva with a Zito instead of just playing Lena, but kind of just trying to keep the power screw up into playing the Combust. So ultimately wanting to play the Zito and then the Combust. And it all makes sense. It all lines up, and you could just play the Evelina next turn. You get a little bit punished by drawing of the power, but instead Furious Magna Ventress coming up, and Evelina kind of just poised to draw a 5/5, a Rhinar.
What will we find today, girl?
I mean, we might
Okay,
even
so
see like a
Evelina,
trade,
right?
or just like a pseudo trade where if you chump block with your Furious Magna Ventress, then you are kind of trading the Magna Ventress for the 5/5 Overwhelm,
Hmm.
and that you
And I
can
think,
shackles. But
yeah, I think, given the position that Super Plans is currently in, they know that they're very behind. So I think they're probably fine conceding the 5/5 to Apple Chips, just hoping, okay, maybe they play the 5/5, I revert to Nothing Remains, and then we can reset from there. I have a lot of power in my hand that I just need a little bit more time and to find that power in order.
To the alleys.
Okay, so we have the Minotaur Lighthouse here, not really able to do much besides simply block. Uh, Second Reaper, taking to the sky, whacking Secret Plans for a lot, and most likely dropping the Reinhardt afterwards.
yeah,
What?
so it's kind of an interesting situation. So your Rivas are pretty good against the Argentport deck. Secret Plains is quite a bit off of being able to have Stormhawk playing, and once you have two Rivas down, one Slay isn't going to really do much. So it becomes just Mystic Shackles and Nothing Remains that become the good answers to Riva. Kind of just being able to bring the beat down here sounds like a pretty good plan. But
Uh,
I think part of the consideration and pause for Apple Chips is whether or not you can actually just hold on to the Riva to actually remain. Probably deduce that Nothing Remains will have already been played.
yeah,
So it would be playing around one top, but factoring.
yeah, and that's probably why they opted not to play the Reinhardt. They have.
Those secret plans by gaining the 2 armor off of the All Plating and Tribe is able to tackle the mattress, and it's important to get those points in. Like we know that the board probably has to be cleaned up for secret plans to be able to win, but you don't want to miss those free chip shots when you're able to get them. Probably just considering what to do with the shackle. So the consideration here is mostly, am I in Nothing Remains or Bust territory, or can I still possibly get out of this one by trading 1 for 1? Um, so the Light Hoof still keeps the Evelina back. So if you shackles the Riva, then you end up in a spot that maybe like another Slay is okay for you. Like, but if you feel like you need to be a little bit greedier, that you need to wait for exactly Nothing Remains, then maybe.
And Secret Plan's going first line, leaving. I mean, Riva is a strong card, but it's not exactly an extremely fast block with only 2 strength. So, uh, yes, the flyers are very important, but and the flyers are very important. Secret Plans most likely will have difficulty dealing with them, but not, you know, they don't apply a lot of. And now that you're able to hit 5 power, you might be able to even without the nothing. All the
Yeah,
hit you in response. Unfortunately, taking Black Book, but still able to snipe this Saloon Massacre, prevent well, uh, to prevent the board the one-sided ish board wipe for Secret Plans. Yes, the Rheinarch and the Riva will really uh will be diminished that turn, but then they're still around, unlike Secret there. So very nice snipe there from
Yeah, it is true that if Secret Plans is able to draw another power, that being able to reach the Parliament Elder kind of just puts an overall halt to the Reva plan, and then you have the ground kind of on lockdown scene between the Light Hoof and be able to play the gift the turn after. See some consideration here because you know that you have the option of be able to playing gift the next turn, but it seems like you wouldn't be able to allow the Evelina to connect, so the 4/4 on Evelina seems to line up right.
Yep. And this is just lethal. Yeah, this is just lethal here. So Secret Plans definitely has to block some. They also understand that Applechips doesn't really have fast speed, so they're not going to be blown out by a double block. The consideration is just what do you think is more threatening right now, the Evelina or the 5/5? I think they made the correct call, not wanting to give Applechips any additional.
So that brings up a funny question. So, Stormguard, are you the kind of player that might play a singleton shrivel in your FFP PS deck? That way you can, in these open decklist sorts of formats, be able to get a little bit of extra value when you're able to attack there? Or do you think it just leads to gameplay and adds variance for not that much of it?
I will put it this way. In last week's show, I ran a singleton backlash in my Elysian mid-range deck
Mhm.
for the open deck lists. Just in case I ran into Nothing Remains, like decks playing sweeper. Um, it wasn't caught on camera in round one, but in round three, I was up against the Brigand, who famously, I suppose, is known for playing control. And the backlash actually came in very, very clutch there. Because they were forced to play around the backlash, which I did actually have in hand, then it made them lining up, say, the sweepers, much more awkward. And I was able to pull off the slight victory, that ever so slight victory in that matchup. So yes, I am absolutely the type of person to run random one-ups just to mess with my opponent in open deck lists.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on that. Like when I'm preparing for opens and where I feel like I get a large amount of edges, I don't plan for day one, I plan for day two. So I'm like, how does my deck fare when my opponent gets to see my deck? And what concessions can I make and how can I prepare like ahead of time once I see their deck list? Like how can I change my mulligan process and important and like how flexible is my deck, especially those with markets or invoke cards. Um, and I really do like that the TNE gives a platform. So before the TNA came back, we still had open deck lists in the day two of our competitions, but people wouldn't actually have that many reps in terms of playing under those sorts of circumstances. But now, just on a near weekly basis, you're actually able to play in these open deck list tournaments. And sure, slightly lower stakes, but you can practice just as meaningfully.
Absolutely. And I think I think one habit that people just really should start doing, as you mentioned, like thinking about how two things. Firstly, before the match with open deck lists, before you just hop in and start your games, just think about how do I expect this match to play out and what kinds of hand do I need. I watched the VODs of last week's challenges because practice so on and so forth, and I noticed that, for instance, you mentioned in my matchup against I'm So Bad that I should not have kept the hand that I did in game two because in this specific matchup, the way that it plays out is my hand will most likely be too slow. And that's exactly what happened. So thinking about how your matchup is going to play out is extremely, extremely important when you have that information. The other side of it is, of course, having the deck list in front of you. I mean, it's already there. You have it. Why not? Right? Uh, just to make sure that all these cards that your opponents may have, things that you need to play around, are always at the forefront. So, Secret Plan's opting to go for the all-out attack here, followed up, and then Nothing Remains. But unfortunately, they're gonna get pretty heavily punished by this charger from Apple Chips.
What will we find today, girl?
Maybe it's a little bit too risky there. I think you'd be okay holding back one Parliament just in case.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty tough in terms of what you want to do there. I think playing the nothing room makes sense because you're just ending up in a spot where eventually you're probably going to lose to a card like Vikram, or you're going to lose to some show off the top, and then when it revenges, just or just any Vikram's bomb with like a hero. I think I do agree that you're probably just losing over time if you don't just nothing remains, but it's definitely like quite the
Yep.
um
Especially at two, right? There's
yeah.
so many things this can be. Understandable.
And with that match, so going 2-1 to Apple Chips, that ends our round two. So round two of is it five today?
Yes, five tonight.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, round two of five. So starting to shape up. Where we have some undefeateds, and maybe we'll get one of them on camera next round. But I don't know if we're gonna go back to the booth or not, or if we should just send them to a break. All right, voice of God has spoken, and we will be going to a break, and we will be back for round three shortly. So get your beverages, maybe do a little stretch, and stay tuned.